The Unexplained Rundown is pleased to partner with tpublic.com and bring you some fun and fantastical apparel and accessories that are truly out of this world. If you're keen to support the show and see it grow, be sure to check out some of the cool designs in the merch store and grab yourself a bargain. Use the link in the description below.
Or concern you about the unknown and the unidentified flying object?
Oh, yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had with the military, and they never were able to make me a concrete report on.
Do you have anything on the subject, sir?
No, I haven't anything on the subject, and there's always things like that going on. The flying saucers, and we've had other things, you know.
For years, the world has seen reality distorted, facts manipulated, and truth hidden. But there's even more to the story than anyone has ever suspected. Because no one has been able to see the whole picture. Until now.
Friends, welcome back to another episode, the last episode of the Unexplained Rundown for 2025. It's good to be with you. If you found this channel intentionally, then like me, you're intrigued by the unexplained mysteries of this mortal coil of ours, and you crave to know what's real and what's not. I'm your host, Grant Levac. Thank you for joining. As always, we have some regulars in the house, which I want to pay my respects to and say g'day. Zaid, always good to see you, buddy. Thank you for jumping in. Jimmy never misses an episode. Great to see you, my friend. This has been one that I've kind of, what we're talking about this evening, I've kind of talked about briefly in a previous live stream, but this is a deep dive. So I'm glad to see you're looking forward to this one, Jimmy, because we're going to jump on in. Jasmine Shrock, always great to see you, my friend. Thank you for tuning in on this Christmas Eve. The eve of Christmas Eve. Bex, great to see you as always. Thanks for tuning in. And very interesting to see that I can speak on orbs inside the house. I've had one materialize and dematerialize in front of my eyes above the coffee table, but I cannot speak on Lue's green orbs. I can only share my experience. Very interesting. Did you happen to get any photographic or video footage, Bex? That would be very interesting to know. But we're going to get into it, folks. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, please consider giving a like, share, subscribe. That goes a long way in supporting the channel. If you want to go above and beyond, you can subscribe on Patreon, or there are YouTube memberships that you can explore in the show notes below. A couple of gold coins a month helps pay some of the costs that go into running a podcast. Any podcasters out there will know that it is not free to run a podcast. So as always, thank you to Patreon members. I truly appreciate your ongoing support and patronage. So thank you as always. If you like getting your podcast on Spotify, check us out. Give us a rate and review if you like to listen on Spotify rather than on YouTube. And you may see something above my head this evening. I bought myself a couple of new items for the home setup. That's the famed McMinnville photo from in the 1950s. That was really the first photo that I had seen of a UFO that inspired me to get curious about this topic. The other is an early Christmas present that I bought myself. Andy McGrillen's brand new book, Atlas of Unidentified Flying Objects, with a foreword from Dinah Pasulka. Couple of pages in there on Westall, which I'm looking forward to having a good read of. I've got a couple of weeks off over the Christmas break, so I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that book and giving it a good read. So Andy's done a great job, obviously, with this book. Kudos to you, Andy, for authoring your first book. No easy feat. And if anyone is interested, feel free to visit Andy's website over at that UFO podcast, or even his handle on X, and you can get some links on where to buy. It's on Amazon, but if you want to check it out on his socials, you certainly can. A couple others in the house want to say hi to. Shorter to Cook, always good to see you. Did you hear Christina Gomez mentioned you for one of your tweets yesterday? Someone dropped me a heads up on that, and I was yeah, I love what Christina does, and I was interested to see and pleasantly surprised to see that she included one of my tweets when in reference to Disclosure Day. She was doing a breakdown on the trailer. So yes, I did see that, and I was pleasantly surprised to see it. Dead fish cheese spread. Hello, might be a first for you, my friend. So thanks for joining in. Stevie T is in the house as well. Great to see you. And Colin, always good to see you, my friend. UAP Aotearoa, Kia ora. I'm not going to even try and butcher that. So late on your side of the pond in New Zealand. So yeah, feel free to tune in whenever you wish. Look, as always, thank you guys for taking some time out of your morning, your day, your evening, your graveyard shift, wherever you are. Most of the folks that tune into the Unexplained Rundown are down under in Australia and across the pond in New Zealand, but we do have an international audience. So always good to see some international folks tune in for these episodes. So what are we talking about this evening, folks? Let me pull up the trusty old slide deck. Now, I don't have any boring PDFs to show you tonight. It's all basically video footage and excerpts from Lue Elizondo's book Imminent, and some slides that I've prepared. So we're doing a deep dive on Lue Elizondo's green orb encounters. Now, I've seen a little bit of chatter on Twitter. This is not a puff piece. This isn't blowing smoke up anyone's backside with this coverage that we're going through this evening, nor is it a bashing. I'm not interested in doing either. It is really a critique of Lue Elizondo's account, his experience with green orbs. And there's a very good reason why I decided to cover Lue's encounter with green orbs in detail, and it's largely because of a conversation that he recently had with James Fox. So James Fox caught up with Lue Elizondo at Lue's cantina, his restaurant called Bombshells, and he put it on X, a brief clip of 5 questions that he wanted to ask Lue Elizondo. And before he kind of got into the questions, Lue had this to say, and this is one of the reasons why I decided to do this episode. So I'll play this for you.
Criticism doesn't bother me. I don't mind criticism. That's how you make yourself better. What I don't like is maliciousness.
Yeah.
What I don't like is backbiting. What I don't like is gossip. What I don't like is people doing things to undermine someone and knowing that they're doing it in a way that is disingenuous.
So that is precisely why I'm doing this. Lue Elizondo welcomes criticism, and this is a critique and criticism of what he has, the claims he has presented to date regarding his green orb encounters. This, again, is not a bashing. It's not an attack on Lue. Quite the contrary. I actually have a ton of respect for Lue. I don't think we would be here where we are today in 2025 if it wasn't for his advocacy on the UAP topic. We are where we are in today in terms of Congress taking this topic seriously, largely in part because of the likes of Lue Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, and so on. So again, if you're expecting a bashing, you're not going to see it here. I'd suggest you maybe jump over to Cambion. You'll probably get something from him there. Again, this is also not going to be a puff piece or a love letter. It is a critique, a valid, what I believe to be a valid criticism and criticisms of the claims that Lue Elizondo has presented regarding his encounters with green orbs. So let's wind the clock back. Let's jump back a couple of years. This is, again, this is kind of for context. Let me wind the clock back for you, if I can pull this up on screen, to March the 23rd of 2022, so more than 3 years ago. So for her celebration episode, celebrating 200,000 subscribers, Linda Moulton Howe had Lue Elizondo on her podcast, Earth Files, and asked him this very interesting question. So let me play this for you.
Just wanted to ask one more question. You have been around the world. You have an incredible background in intel. Have you ever seen a UFO?
Until I have this conversation with you, I've always been very close hold on my own personal experiences. I will say, simply put, yes.
And hopefully in an upcoming interview at some point that you can tell me in full detail, and we'll put it on the Earth Files YouTube channel.
So there you go. So March 23rd, 2022, Lue Elizondo publicly confirmed that he had seen a UFO. In other words, he's an experiencer. I took that to be that he is an experiencer. And so keeping that as context, that will help plant the seed for what we're going to cover in this deep dive on Lue Elizondo's green orb encounters. So that was in 2022. Now, in a couple of years thereafter, on the 20th of August 2024, we know that Lue Elizondo released his book Imminent, which I have a copy of, and we're going to reference. We're going to call out a couple of the excerpts from Lue Elizondo's book Imminent, and again covered under fair use. We're educating the public. We're critiquing the works and claims that are presented. So all of this is kosher. So, but August 2024, Lue released his book Imminent: Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs. So let's have a look at what Lue has to say specifically about his encounter with green orbs in his book Imminent. So in fact, he devoted an entire chapter to orbs, chapter 6. And he kicks off that chapter with the following quote, or the following commentary. I never had any interaction with orbs until I started working with the program. I was shocked to find that a lot of my colleagues and I began experiencing firsthand some of these orbs at our home. And that was on page 68 of Imminent. A little further down the page, I'm going to read directly from the book here. He goes on to say, he talks about the actual experience of encountering green orbs. He goes on to say, we had a long hallway in the house, and one evening, a green glowing ball, probably about the size of a basketball with soft edges that weren't defined, floated down slowly from the kitchen to our bedroom door just below ceiling height, then disappeared into a wall. And obviously this is just AI generated imagery on screen to support what I'm reading out here just for context. Hoping Jen caught a glimpse of it, I turned to her, catching the perplexed look on her face. She indeed saw it the entire 10 seconds it was in our house. So that is where we're going to kind of kick things off. So on the next page, Lue goes on to say, were these things, not knowing what they were these things probes sent to scope out my house? Was this some sort of adversarial technology being used to conduct surveillance? Let me just come across here. Oops. Conduct surveillance against my family and me, or worse, was this all part of the UAP issue? Maybe another more advanced intelligence was looking into me and my colleagues because they knew we were looking into them. Keep that quote in mind there. Or did it all presage something more sinister? Lue goes on to write in his book, chapter 6, in Imminent on Orbs. He goes on to write, Two colleagues in particular were under medical care for both cutaneous and visceral injuries that were sustained from interactions with UAP while working with AAWSAP, which we know as the Advanced Aerospace Weapon Systems Applications Program, and AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AAWSAP, AATIP, and we had numerous reports of negative biological effects associated with UAP encounters, especially orbs. The injury sustained seemed to stem from some, I think it's some kind of directed energy exposure, I think it should be, almost like radiation. Goes on to say, and I'll read this out because it's a little bit small. Over time, more orbs appeared in our home. Not too frequently, a whole month might go by and then one would arrive. Since our orbs manifested as clear or green, I did not feel compelled to warn my family to avoid them. I didn't want to frighten them further. As far as I knew, only blue orbs were problematic. Like the rest of the family, I had tried to ignore the visitations, hoping that they would stop, but they didn't. During times of high atmospheric energy, such as storms, the occurrences became more pronounced. There are people who would conclude this was somehow connected to lightning, but it wasn't. Keep that quote in mind, but it wasn't. Nor were there any high voltage power lines anywhere in the vicinity. On page 71, I found the whole thing bewildering, a breaching of the wall of logic I'd previously arrogantly erected in my mind. What was happening? How could this be happening to us? What was going on was complex, a bona fide conundrum that stumped everyone back at the office. So we obviously had informed people about these occurrences back at the office, you would think in his AATIP role. I also wasn't sold on the idea that the UAP activity was benign, especially not the UAP chasing our combat aircraft and interfacing with our nuclear capabilities. So that is essentially, and there's a few other things that we'll come back to in Lue's book, but that is essentially Lue sharing his experience and talking about orbs in chapter 6 of Imminent. Now, the way that I'm going to approach what I'm presenting in this episode is making the assumption that what everything Lue has included in his book and has presented publicly and stated publicly is true. Because those of you that have been following Lue for a long time will remember that in August of 2020, he made a pledge. And his pledge to everyone was, number one, I will always tell you the truth. So we're going to take Lue at his word this evening and accept that what he is stating in his book and publicly in interviews is the truth. And we won't go through the other pledges there. So let's fast forward to the 25th of August, 2024. This is the first time that Lue Elizondo publicly talked about his encounters with green orbs. And it was in the NewsNation special that Ross Coulthart put out, interviewing Lue and his wife, Jennifer, covering a whole lot of ground, but we're focusing on the green orb encounters, and that's what they talked about in this episode. So let me play this short clip for you. This is from Ross Coulthart's interview with Lue Elizondo for NewsNation on the 25th of August of 2024. So let me play this for you.
Years of studying UAP encounters, he began experiencing what's known in UAP circles as the hitchhiker effect. UAPs were appearing at his home, perhaps because he was attracting them.
What started happening?
Oh, wow. Where do I start? Well, we would have these weird glowing balls of light in the house. They were green, they were small, they were diffuse, kind of like a little neon ball, and it really caused some disruption for my kids and my wife.
What were you seeing?
I would routinely see orbs.
What do you mean by orbs?
Small, little, spherical, green, lightish green type of color. And I'd be just walking down the hall, and I would just stop, and it would just continue to go right through the wall.
So we're talking about the hitchhiker effect. Something had followed Lue home from work.
Or by his very nature, yes.
How did he explain things? Was he able to talk about what was going on?
Not well.
I could imagine you were pretty angry.
I was very upset. The house had been turned upside down.
So it sounds like pretty myth there that this was happening, and under the assumption that it was as a result of Lue's work with AATIP investigating the phenomenon, the UAP issue. So that was in August of 2024. Now, and obviously this is following the release of Lue Elizondo's book, Imminent. So then Lue went on the podcast circuit, started doing a number of interviews, and it was only a few weeks after that NewsNation special came out that Lue went on and had an interview with, let me just show the screen here. There we go. With Curt Jaimungal of Theories of Everything podcast. Now, this wasn't the first time that Lue had been on Theories of Everything with Curt Jaimungal. In fact, he'd been on a number of times previously. Now, what's interesting, and I don't know why Curt has done this, but none of the interviews that Curt Jaimungal has done with Lue Elizondo are publicly available for viewing on his YouTube channel. In fact, none of the interviews that he's done with folks in the UAP community and subject matter experts are available. They're all private. He has removed them from public view. And I reached out to Curt on X, the DM, and asked him why he had removed the Lue Elizondo interviews, and he didn't respond. So I have no idea why. I have a suspicion as to why Curt has done that. I think he's maybe a little bit fed up with the UAP topic, the anecdotal evidence, no presentation of direct evidence. That's just my assumption. I don't know. But on the 5th of September, Curt Jaimungal put out this post on X promoting this interview that he had just done with Lue Elizondo. So let me set this up for you. This is, again, 5th of September. In this since removed interview, Lue would expand on his encounters with green orbs in response to some very specific questions. I thought they were great questions that Curt had asked Lue directly in this interview. So let me play this first of a few clips that I've got for you. And so this is from his interview with Lue Elizondo, which he titled "The Day After Disclosure."
Out one of the most fascinating chapters in your book, the one about orbs. Why don't you give the story about the orbs? Why don't you bring the audience up to speed, please? And by the way, this is in the book named Imminent.
Yeah, so let me first preface. My family and I, to include a couple neighbors, experienced something very odd over the course of a period of time while I was associated with the AATIP program. And there were these diffuse green, luminous balls of light with no hard edge. Think of like a neon sign, how it kind of glows. This was the size, anywhere between the size of a volleyball to the size of a little baseball. And they were seen not only by me, and I wouldn't have said anything if I wasn't one to see them, but my wife and my children saw these luminous balls float down the hallway, in some cases, of our home and pass right through a wall or through a door. Now, the only congruency I can say definitively is that when we had experienced these balls of light, whatever they were, it was during a time that I was involved in the AATIP program. And it turns out other individuals who were also involved in that program
also experienced similar encounters. That's their story to tell, not mine. But definitively, we had that encounter since going back to like 2010, very early on. Now, let me preface this. Could have been ball lightning. Sure. Could there be an electrical glitch and a wiring problem in my house that was creating some sort of St. Elmo's fire effect? Sure. Could it have been some sort of plasma energy because there was a storm 20 miles away that did something with the atmosphere, and now because of the electrical conduit in my house, ball lightning was experienced and static charge? I don't know. It is possible. Absolutely. I can only relay to you what actually occurred, and whether or not there was a connection between that and the UAP phenomenon. Some people say yes. Some people say definitively yes, there's a connection there. We don't know what they are. Maybe they're drones. Maybe there's some sort of unmanned vehicle, surveillance vehicle, ISR type capability to monitor things. I couldn't tell you. I just know it did not seem to be technological. And then when you talk to other people, like indigenous people, they ascribe that to being spirits, right? It has nothing to do with UAP. It actually has to do with spirits and ancestors coming to visit you. And then you talk to some other folks that have a different explanation for it. You talk to scientists, they say, oh, it's just ball lightning. But it was very strange. And so I decided to put it in the book because I don't know what it means. But I wanted to be transparent and share that with the reader.
So that was that interview on the 5th of September with Curt Jaimungal. Now, my pushback there would be, based on what I just read, the excerpt that I read from Lue Elizondo's book, Imminent. In his book, Lue writes categorically that it wasn't connected to lightning. On page 70, he wrote, and I quote, "During times of high atmospheric energy, such as storms, the occurrences became more pronounced. There are people who would conclude this was somehow connected to lightning, but it wasn't." So he ruled that out in his book, nor were there any high voltage power lines anywhere in the vicinity. And then furthermore, you went on to state this in chapter 6 of your book. Obviously, you talk, the whole chapter is devoted to orbs. So if we come back to, and we're kind of going to build on each of the things that Lue talks about in these interviews that he has done over the years. But if we go back to another excerpt from Lue Elizondo's book, this is in chapter 6, this is on page 67. He goes on to say, one of the most common types of UAP that are often reported is what we call orbs, which are small luminous balls of light, or in some cases, smooth and metallic spheres. I was shocked by the frequency of how often these orbs have been reported, whether by commercial pilots or military pilots or eyewitnesses on the group, particularly around military test ranges and sensitive US military facilities. So I got the impression that he was trying to leave it very open-ended as to, well, what he observed in his house may or may not have been UAP. But going by what you have included in your book, which again, the byline is Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, you devoted a whole chapter in your memoir about UFOs on orbs. So I think for me, it just felt a little bit like it was trying to walk back a little bit, maybe that what you had seen was not UAP, but by its very definition of what you've put in your book, orbs are identified. They're anomalous. It traveled through your wall. It had no visible signs of propulsion, and it's a phenomenon that has been observed around the globe for decades. So I would contend that orbs are, in their very nature, UAP. So, and let's build on that. If we go back to an earlier interview that Curt Jaimungal, again, of the Theories of Everything podcast, had done with Lue. This is almost a full year prior to the interview that I just played for you. This was an interview he did with Lue on the 17th of August of 2023. Lue would go on and say this. Make sure I've got the right. Here we go. I'll play this. Got this teed up for you.
UFOs are associated with orbs, at least anecdotally. Firstly, what's the reason for that? And then second, is there any evidence that you know that suggests that these orbs may be more plentiful than we think, perhaps around us, whether in homes or outside cityscapes, just cloaked?
Yeah, the problem with the word orb is you're not going to get a common definition from most people. Everybody thinks an orb means something else. Some people think an orb is a little plasma ball. Others say it's much, much bigger and intelligently controlled. Orb is kind of a general catch-all. When you say is an orb related to UFO, well, by definition, it is a UFO. It's unidentified and it's flying, or it's it's in our atmosphere, and it's an object. It's something. We don't know what it is. So by definition, an orb is a UAP. But the question is it a UAP in the sense that we're talking about UAPs, whether lenticular type shape or maybe a cylindrical shape or a triangular vehicle? I think the jury's still out. There does seem to be some information that suggests that orbs, as you call them, are sometimes associated with other UAP sightings, that there are UAPs in the sky, and then you see these little balls of light. The problem is it's a very generalized term. We now know for a fact that things such as ball lightning are real. Is that an orb? Well, yeah, at times it looks like an orb to me. Other times when you have large amounts of energy being released into the atmosphere and the environment. Let's talk about tectonic movement, for example, where these titanic forces right underneath the surface of the Earth, creating this plasma effect in the atmosphere, where you get these different colors shooting into the sky, and again, orbs, if you will, being reported and seen and even captured on camera. But that's an orb that I think we can all agree is probably being manufactured naturally. Now, are there orbs that are intelligently controlled? Well, we did talk about that at AATIP. One of the questions were, when you look at the different shapes and sizes of vehicles, orbs tend to be almost like I guess in a vernacular sense, think of a UAV. Think of a drone. They tend to be described as being much smaller, highly maneuverable, different colors, sometimes red, sometimes green, sometimes yellow, sometimes blue. Is it possible that those colors are indicative of mission set, right? Is it are the blue ones doing certain things where the reds are doing something else and their purpose is something else, where the yellows and whites are doing something else? It's certainly plausible. I don't dismiss that at all. The problem is we just don't have enough information, because it appears that these orbs tend to be small, that it's really hard to argue the case that they are being occupied by any type of biological organism. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not. It just means that, we haven't seen that yet. We don't know what these are. Are these perhaps some sort of unmanned reconnaissance capability that are kicked out? Not much different than we use drones ourselves, right, to do certain types of reconnaissance missions. We don't know.
So a lot to kind of unpack there, but the key takeaway from me there was that Lue had talked about orbs at AATIP, and he mentioned that different colored orbs could have different mission sets, but they didn't know for certain because they didn't have enough information. That's an interesting point that he made there. They didn't have enough information to reach a determination, but it was certainly plausible. So put a pin in that. So let's come back to jump forward again. This is the interview that Lue had done with Curt Jaimungal on the 5th of September of 2024, and we're kind of playing things mostly in chronological order, but there are a little bit of jumping back and forth as we go through. So in this same interview, where Lue is sharing his experience with these green orbs, take note of how he responds to this question specifically from Curt Jaimungal. I think it could just be me, but I think you'll notice there's a shift in the cadence, how fast he responds compared to his earlier response. So keen to get your thoughts when you watch it. Feel free to opine and put it in the chat. But this is from the 5th of September, 2024.
Up cameras?
So no, we didn't have cameras inside the house.
We had cell phones, but back in 2010, I was using a BlackBerry, a government-issued BlackBerry, where we did not have cameras. The cameras were disabled. So I did never, and also we couldn't predict the frequency. It wasn't like I had a camera next to me all the time. It's like when you're sitting down and watching a TV show with a family, all of a sudden, whoop, there it goes.
I just mean home setup cameras in the corner monitoring a room or the outside.
No, we did not. We didn't even have cameras externally. We had an alarm system, but we did not have cameras set up in the house.
Now, this is where it gets really strange for me. So no cameras set up inside or external to the house, only a security setup. Had a government-issued BlackBerry, no capability to take photographs. Surely, though, Jennifer, your wife, would have a phone, maybe your children, maybe you'd have your own personal phone. I mean, the iPhone was out then. That had relatively decent camera capabilities. And even if it wasn't phone, the little Canon, snapshot cameras, they did a pretty good job. They had a pretty decent megapixel capability. So just take note of his responses there, that didn't set up cameras, never thought to set up cameras, never had anything outside, never had anything inside, only had a security system. So let's now build on that and move to an interview that Lue did with, it was on a podcast called The Diary of a CEO. And this was an interview that Lue did on the 31st of October of 2024. So again, on the podcast circuit, talking about his book Imminent, talking about his experiences. That interview that I just showed you with Curt, that was from the 5th of September 24. So this is a little over a month later. Take note of what is asked here and what Lue's response is, because I find it very interesting in the context of the previous clip that you just saw, where Lue stated he didn't have any he didn't have any cameras, CCTV, motion detecting cameras, external of his property or internal. So watch this clip.
Life of someone working in a project that deals with UFOs at the Pentagon. Like, you come in the morning, you get your coffee.
I had the two worst portfolios anybody could ever ask for at the Pentagon. I was like a pariah. I had the two most unpopular portfolios. I was, on one hand, I was working the UAP issue, UFO issue. On the other hand, I was also working Guantanamo Bay issues. Very politically charged, very untenable situation. But that was my job. So I had both those portfolios. And so every day was, it was like riding a tiger to work. And every day that tiger just wanted to rip you off and shred you into pieces, and you just had to hold on for dear life. Yeah, it was stressful. In 2014, I was informed that I was put on the ISIS Al-Qaeda kill list for my work at involving Guantanamo Bay. And of course, we had the UAP issue. It was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable times. It was uncomfortable time for me professionally. I wouldn't have wished it on anybody.
So what I found interesting there is in 2014, Lue was made aware of the fact that he was on ISIS and Al-Qaeda's kill list. Now, Lue stated earlier that these encounters with green orbs started in 2010 and went on for a number of years, which Lue talks about the actual date ranges in the next clip that you'll see. But if you're on, if you know that you're on, you're on a dead man's kill list, you're on a ISIS Al-Qaeda kill list, you discover that in 2014, wouldn't that prompt you to, out of an abundance of caution, install CCTV cameras, at least external of your house, above and beyond just security? If I was in Lue's position, I would, I mean, I've got cameras, motion detect cameras on the outside of my property, and I'm not on a kill list. So it makes no sense to me that if you're really worried about your safety and security, and you know that you're on a kill list, why would you not take it upon yourself to do everything in your power to protect your family? Obviously, you had, access to weapons, I imagine, but wouldn't you at least want to have CCTV security cameras as well? That just someone make that make sense for me. It does not make sense when you're informed of being included on an ISIS Al-Qaeda kill list in 2014, and we know that these green orbs started in 2010. So just park that, because now Lue talks about, if we go back to his interview with Curt Jaimungal, again, the one in September, the month prior, Lue talks specifically about, well, how frequently did this occur and for how many years? And this kind of just adds to my bewilderment, really, as to why you would not install security cameras external to your property when you know you're on an ISIS Al-Qaeda kill list. So let me play this clip from his interview on the 5th of September 2024 with Curt Jaimungal on Theories of Everything.
Desire to set up a bunch of cameras because you never knew where it was going to appear. I could put 10 cameras in a hallway. Go ahead.
It didn't occur to you to set up cameras, and then you said no. It just never occurred to you, the thought.
No, because it wasn't alarming to us. It was curious. We were curious about it, but you didn't know where it was going to appear, right? Sometime in a hallway, sometimes in the kitchen. I mean, I can't put 1,000 cameras around the house and hope that I'm going to, have every single one of them on all the time, hope to capture something. It wasn't that big of a deal to us. It was just, curious.
That wasn't the clip that I was expecting it would be, but it kind of just adds to, it's another interview that he talks about the date ranges specifically. But again, this is what I find frustrating. You see that Curt is obviously pressing him on his decision not to set up cameras. I mean, how can you say that you weren't alarmed and you were only curious when, again, you knew that you were on this ISIS kill list? That just doesn't make any sense to me. So let's use that as a chance to actually, we'll go back to the book, Imminent, because I want to pull up a page. This is now an excerpt from page, this is not in chapter 6 on orbs, this is later in the book, where Lue would go on to say, as time went on, I kept learning more and more about the darker, more sinister aspect to UAP encounters, the biological effects, medical consequences experienced by human beings who encountered UAP technology. On the next page, he gives an example. August 2007, a mother and daughter driving at night on a road near Davis, California, saw 3 blue orbs appear on the road. 2 of the orbs allegedly penetrated the vehicle. One passed directly through the older woman's upper chest and exited her upper right arm. The older woman reported feeling nausea immediately. Both women were unclear about how much time had elapsed during the encounter. Later, the mother began to gain weight, experienced premature aging, and developed skin rashes, hair loss, blurry vision, hearing loss, and osteoarthritis. 2 years later, doctors diagnosed this previously healthy woman with breast cancer. She later underwent a bilateral mastectomy. Now, Colm Kelleher talked about this case in detail in an interview that he did with Curt Jaimungal. I think he was joined by George Knapp. This very specific case, which was investigated during the AAWSAP era. Now, I would assume, and this is just an assumption, that Lue would have been aware of this case during his tenure on AATIP following the conclusion of AAWSAP. This incident happened in 2007. Obviously, I'm assuming Lue knew about this case before he decided to write his book, and he knew about this case during the window of where he and his family are encountering green orbs. And in this instance, he talks about these 3 blue orbs that resulted in negative health physiological effects on these poor passengers in the vehicle. So, and again, let's use that as a chance to now build on that comment. We'll go back to his interview with Curt Jaimungal, and he now talks about, and this is kind of all building up to where we're going a little bit later on in the show, but I want to play this clip, which adds another layer of complexity to Lue's claims that he's presenting.
Of Imminent, you reference something called the hitchhiker effect. So for those who don't know, what is the hitchhiker effect?
Sure.
And how has it affected you?
Sure. That was a term coined by Jay Stratton, I believe. He was the first one to coin that description, that people that were involved in this portfolio, and I was warned earlier on by Jim Lukatsky. He said, this is a sticky portfolio.
A sticky portfolio.
Yeah, sticky portfolio. And I didn't understand, what does that mean, sticky portfolio? And only realizing later they were referring to this hitchhiker effect, that a lot of people that were involved in this effort with the government would experience strange, weird things and phenomena, encounters. As for me, I can't explain it, so I don't really expound on it very much because I don't know what it means.
So he was warned about the hitchhiker effect when he had this meeting with James Lukatsky, that this is a sticky portfolio, and he came to discover later on that it was reference to the hitchhiker effect. But if you knew that in advance, prior to or during this time period where you were encountering green orbs, what precautions did you take? Because you talked about earlier, you didn't know if these orbs had a mission set based on their different color. Well, we know that you mentioned the blue orbs were problematic, that they may have caused negative physiological health impacts. How can you be so confident that green or clear orbs don't present a clear and present danger to health, well-being, property? How can you make that? How can you make that assumption? And if you knew about this hitchhiker effect, did you and people on the team, AATIP, ORSAP team that also experienced orbs, did you do anything to mitigate, protect yourself? I don't know what you could do, but I certainly know from a security standpoint, you could have set up some cameras to attempt to collect information. And we'll talk about the collection of information as we look at some of the other clips. But this is the interview that really kind of threw me for six and bewildered me further, because in 20th of September of 2024, this is less than a month after that interview with Curt Jaimungal, where he's talking about his experiences with green orbs. He goes on the Julian Dorey podcast, and he talks about his experience again with the green orbs. And I'll play this clip for you. I'll frame it for you, set up the context. Actually, no, I'll just play the clip so you can listen for yourself. So this is on the 20th of September 2024, an interview that he did, I believe his second interview that he had done with Julian Dorey on the Julian Dorey podcast.
Experiences too, and it hasn't affected you health-wise like some of these other ones, but
it hasn't. No.
You talked about how, I guess like shortly after being assigned to this desk for the first time, you started to notice orbs in your house in Kent, and your wife did too. Can you tell me what happened?
And
there?
let me be clear, because I can't tell you with a straight face that they're UFO related or they're UFOs. I can't.
All right, that's good. So you're open-minded on that.
Oh, 100%, brother. Yeah. Let me tell you again.
So let me stop with this. So, and I'll play a couple of clips from this interview, but where I get stuck on that is if you couldn't tell if the orbs were UFO related, then why would you devote an entire chapter in your book Imminent to orbs, again, which the byline you've got inside the Pentagon's hunt for UFOs? Again, you're kind of trying to walk back the possibility that what you encountered was not UAP related. And what would be helpful to try and better understand what it was you're observing is if you collected information and data. And that's what we'll hear from Lue specifically in this interview that he did with Julian Dorey. So let's continue on.
Facts, right? I get into this program, AATIP, and here's the facts. We start seeing these green luminous balls of light diffuse.
I'll stop it there for a moment because there is another. Actually, you know what? We'll come back to that interview because I do want to bring up Lue is basically trying to, sell the point there that he didn't know or couldn't tell if these orbs were UAP related. However, if we go back to an interview that Lue did a couple of years prior, this was on the 6th of July, 2022, on a channel called the Nimitz Encounters. Lue would talk about orbs specifically in a UAP UFO context. So let's listen to this clip briefly, and I'll actually just add it in. Just going to make sure I've got it here. There we go.
Familiar with these glowing fireballs. Have you come across, I showed you a graphic, and have you come across any descriptions like that in your career?
Yes, absolutely, and they're not uncommon. What seem to be these orbs or luminous balls of almost like plasma-like balls, and some have even speculated that these are similar to from something we're familiar with. Could be compared to unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, or drones, basically probes, if you will, that are related to UAP and potentially even launched or deployed from an actual UAP craft.
So they're very common, and you're aware of them. You're aware of orbs throughout your career. So then how does this response that you provided Julian Dorey on, again, the 20th of September, I'm not too sure how that previous statement reconciles with this talking point.
The size of maybe a volleyball, some the size of a little baseball. And they're witnessed not only by me, otherwise I wouldn't have said anything. They're witnessed by my spouse, and they're also witnessed by my kids, and even some of our neighbors are seeing these balls of light
outside your house,
inside the house, inside down the hallway, just going by, almost like a really bizarre
volleyball up to that size.
Yeah, but remember, diffuse, right? So it's not like it's just, it's the glow pattern comes up to about here, and then so these are being witnessed, and at the same time, other individuals that were part of AATIP are also having a similar experience. So what we do know is that other people in the AATIP program were also experiencing this. Now, could it be ball lightning? Sure. Could it be St. Elmo's fire? Sure. Could it be faulty wiring, and now it's ionizing the air local around it, and it's creating these luminous plasma balls? 100%. What makes it interesting is it wasn't just us. It was other people in AATIP who were also experiencing it while they were working in AATIP. Before AATIP didn't have the problem, and after AATIP didn't have the problem, only during AATIP. So that's the facts. But whether they were actually UAP or related UAP, I can't tell you that. I don't know.
Well, again, you're trying to disconnect orbs from UAP when you've actually just talked in that 2022 interview that orbs were very common. You're aware of them during your tenure at AATIP. Certainly, orbs could have been one or more of those things that you just mentioned, but orbs could also be UAP. Unidentified anomalous phenomena. And that's the mindset that I believe that you should have. If you're experiencing or observing something that's unidentified, it's anomalous, and it's phenomena that's been reported for decades and globally, well, then you should definitely then treat orbs as a potential UAP. That just is how that makes sense to me. I don't know why you're trying to separate the two there. So we'll kind of build. We'll build on this point further. I'll come back to my trusty old slide deck here. Oops. Let me pull this back up for you. So we'll go back to, and I'm kind of, thinking and collecting my thoughts as we go here, because we're going to talk about it in a bit more detail as we get to the end, because I did prepare some specific talking points. So let's have a look at what Lue says on page 117 of his book, Imminent. He talks specifically about a case, Los Alamos, New Mexico, 2013. Scientists and researchers at the legendary White Sands Missile Test Range, the same location where the Manhattan Project constructed the components for the atomic bomb during World War II, were testing yet another device whose nature I cannot divulge, when witnesses spotted several mysterious and luminous orbs moving over a nearby ridge. These witnesses included scientists, security personnel, and FBI special agent assigned to the Albuquerque field office. The orbs moved toward the test site, hovered over the device as if scanning it for intel, then zipped away, brashly flying over the heads of bewildered scientists. So again, that's a classic example of where orbs, there is a history of this phenomena being observed, not just by members of the general public, but incursions over military testing ranges, atomic testing sites, and you're trying to disconnect the possibility that orbs may or may not be UAP related. I would be leaning more to the fact that it could be. You don't want to exclude orbs from, you don't want to exclude the UAP bucket from what you've encountered, what you've experienced. So the 30th of September, this is again going in chronological order after his interview on the Julian Dorey podcast, and we'll come back to that in a moment. I think we're going to play it again. You know what? I'll just double check. So we're going to play that again, because if we, you know what? I'll let that Julian Dorey interview play out. Actually, you know what? I think we will come to it a little later on. I'm just going to do a quick check over the notes, folks. So give me 1 second here. Yeah, so let's play the rest of that Julian Dorey interview. Let's just come back. I'll play this for you.
Times did this happen, and over what type of time period are we talking about?
So 2010 to probably 2017, 16, probably, so I say like once every couple months. People are like, oh, then, every 2 months. No, because sometimes you'd see it back to back in a couple of days, and then it might be 2, 3, 4 months. And then all of a sudden 3 more days go by and you're seeing these green balls of light in the house, even and outside as well. So there wasn't any pattern. That's one thing, obviously trying to find a pattern to this. Is coming every Tuesday.
It's random.
Yeah, random. And of course, we're asleep at night and I'm not at home during the day. So I'm only seeing them while I'm at home. And same with my family. My kids are at school. My wife is working too. So it could have been much more frequent, but we just weren't there to see it.
Did you report this to Puthoff or Davis or people on the AATIP team?
Yeah, they call it, they had a term for it. They called it high strangeness.
High strange. What do you mean?
I don't know. Ask them. I don't know what the hell it means. They call it high strange. Okay. Yeah, strange. You're right.
Did they come in and investigate it though? Like, did they try to set up anything?
No, they had no issue with it at all. They said it's very, very normal for that to happen.
They said it was normal. Yeah, so someone on the AATIP team, counter intel guy, is now seeing
not counter intel. Oh yeah, I was counter intel.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Is now seeing orbs in his house while you're working on this project about these UAPs.
Right.
And the team that's in charge of UAPs doesn't want to go investigate that.
No, they're saying that they're having the same issue too. They're like, well, what do you want to do about it? I don't know.
Set up a camera, Ghostbusters, get Bill Murray in there, do something. right?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, once every few months, you'd have to have a lot of cameras. I don't have a setup like this. I can't afford anything this fancy.
Listen, I'll donate these. We're going to find Man Bear Pig in there, baby. Let's get Al Gore on the line.
So, that whole exchange, that makes no sense to me. Like, if you've got members of AATIP or SAP that are experiencing similar phenomena, and they're saying it's normal, high strangeness, it's curious, can't really do anything about it, but we know that blue orbs potentially have negative physiological effects. Not going to try and collect any data. And he was referencing specifically there to scientists, Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff, and we'll talk about what scientists thrive on. They operate in a data-driven environment. They adhere to the scientific method, and they're telling you, don't worry about it. She'll be right, mate. Ignore it. Nothing you can do about it. That just doesn't make any sense. That doesn't wash for me. It doesn't make any sense. And I'd be very interested to learn if Hal and Eric can speak to the veracity of that statement that Lue made in that interview. If that's true, if what Lue was saying is true, and again, we're taking him at his word, then if Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff are just fobbing it off saying, don't worry about it, and we know that orbs could be UAP related, it doesn't really instill a whole lot of confidence that they were maybe the right people for the job. And if they were taking it as serious as they should have. Again, I'm just going off of what Lue is presenting, and what he is saying to us is true, because that was his pledge, that he will always tell us the truth. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Let's now move on to an article that appeared in the Daily Mail. This was on the 30th of September, 2024. Again, these podcast interviews, this is all happening in the month after the release of Imminent. And in this article, which I've added in the show notes below if you want to have a look at it, Lue is providing some specific talking points on his encounters with green orbs. So let me play this clip from the Daily Mail article.
Your incidents that occurred simultaneously while I was involved in the AATIP portfolio, and I'll tell you, it wasn't just me. A lot of the folks in AATIP experienced very similar things. It was witnessed by friends, neighbors. What the connection is, I can't tell you for sure. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But we experienced, my family, my kids, my wife, some neighbors saw these green little diffuse balls of light, luminous balls of light. Think of a volleyball, but without hard edges, right? Floating through the house. You can call them an orb, I guess. You can call them, maybe some sort of drone or remote operated vehicle. I've never seen anything like it. But I guess some people describe it as like ball lightning, maybe. But a diffuse green orb ball just hover right down the hall and disappear right through a wall. What, if any, the connection is to the UAP, I don't know. I'm just reporting it in the book so people know, right? If you're going to be transparent, you got to be as transparent as you can, to include even in your own life, and even if it makes you look kind of crazy. That's what happened. And if it was just me, maybe I wouldn't have written about it. But the fact that it happened to other colleagues of mine that were in AATIP, I wanted to share that experience. And again, is there a congruency? Is there a relationship between the two? I don't know. Some people speculate that there is. Maybe it's a small reconnaissance drone or UAP that's, they're interested in our weapon systems. Well, they're obviously interested maybe in the people who are looking into them. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much because I simply don't have enough information or data. I have my opinion, but at the end of the day, my opinion doesn't really matter. If it was just me that saw these things, I probably, again, wouldn't have said anything. But the fact is my whole family saw them. And other members in AATIP experienced this same thing as well. So what the relationship is, I absolutely could not tell you, but it was very perplexing.
All right, so this is where I push back quite strongly here and say, if it happened to other people on AATIP during your tenure with AATIP, and you led AATIP, then why did you not endeavor to collect any information and data? Particularly if you didn't know the connection to UAP. Doesn't that feel like a missed opportunity? Unidentified anomalous phenomena. Well, it was certainly unidentified. You didn't know what it was. And you stated that. It was anomalous. It displayed at least one of the 5 observables, and that's anti-gravity, positive lift. Objects hover, move, or ascend with no visible propulsion, seemingly overcoming gravity effortlessly. And in addition, it disappeared through a wall. It doesn't get more anomalous than that. A solid object. And 3, it was phenomena that has been observed and reported time and time again. And we've covered just a couple of examples that you've documented in your book. So I would argue that there certainly was a connection with what you and your family observed with UAP. And if you don't know what it is, and others in AATIP have experienced the same phenomena, and you know that orbs have been reported to cause negative physiological effects, and you're the head of AATIP, taking a data-driven approach to investigate and better understand the potential threat that UAP pose by way of examining capabilities and intent. We can talk about that in a second. Why on earth would you simply ignore what you're encountering and not attempt to collect any data by way of video and or photographic evidence? If you didn't want to speculate because you don't have enough information and data, why wouldn't you attempt to collect data? That feels like a massive missed opportunity for the director of AATIP. I don't understand that logic. And let's remind everyone what Lue stated the mission of AATIP was. And he said this in a pretty significant interview. This was on 60 Minutes for CBS. This was on the 29th of July of 2021. And so let me play this clip for you where Lue talks about UAP, the potential national or the national security issue that UAP pose and the potential national security threat that UAP pose. So let me share this clip.
AATIP was quite simple. It was to collect and analyze information involving anomalous aerial vehicles. What I guess in the vernacular you call them UFOs. We call them UAPs.
You know how this sounds. It sounds nutty, wacky.
Look, Bill, I'm not telling you that it doesn't sound wacky. What I'm telling you, it's real. The question is, what is it? What are its intentions? What are its capabilities?
So he said it just there. The mission of AATIP was to collect and analyze information involving UAP. If that was your mission, then you failed that mission with respect to the personal observations of orbs in your own home and what others had recollected that also they were experiencing throughout their tenure on AATIP. That's a massive missed opportunity. And you've talked time and time again about capabilities intent when framing UAP as a potential national security issue. And he talked about this specifically, the idea of UAP and the potential national security threat in his NewsNation interview with Ross Coulthart. Again, this is back in the 25th of August, 2024, the same, only days after his book Imminent came out. And this is what Lue had to say specifically about UAP as a potential threat.
In order to understand if something is a threat from a national security perspective, it's a very simple calculus. It's capabilities versus intent. We see some of the capabilities, and by the way, we can't replicate them. We have no idea the intent. So to presume or to assume that these things are friendly or they're hostile, there's not enough data.
There's not enough data. So why the hypocrisy? AATIP is about collecting data collecting information that can help you better understand the capabilities and intent and potential national security threat that UAP pose. But in your own personal experience, you did exactly the opposite. You did nothing. You didn't attempt to collect any data. Now, maybe you did in the way of documenting what it is you saw, but in terms of collecting photographic and video evidence, you didn't. You've stated that categorically that you didn't. And so that, to me, feels like an epic failure from the director of AATIP. Again, we're all working on the assumption that what you are telling, what claims you are presenting, Lou, are in fact true. And collecting data and information would have, you would think, helped further your mission and objectives with AATIP. But you ignored it? How does that make sense? And again, you've reiterated this line about threat, potential threat. We have to take into consideration capabilities and intent. And you talked about that in an interview that you did on The Daily Show. And this is what you said. You kind of reiterated that same line, and you gave a very specific analogy, which I'll play.
Something is a threat. It's really a very simple calculus. It's capabilities versus intent. Now, we've seen some of the capabilities. We still have no idea the intent. So therefore, we don't know if it's a threat. But let me give you a very quick analogy here. You probably live in a great, lovely area, just like your audience here. Do you lock your door at night?
I live in New York City, so no, not really.
Do you lock your front door?
There's aliens here right now in New York City, as you can see. Yeah, I do lock my front door.
So, and most people do. And let's say you lock your windows and you turn on your alarm. Let's say one Sunday morning you come downstairs to have a hot cup of coffee or tea, and despite your doors being locked and your window and your alarm on, there's now size 12 muddy boot prints in your living room floor, in your carpet that weren't there the night before. Now, no one's been hurt, nothing's out of place, but despite you doing all this other stuff and locking doors and making sure the alarm's on, there are now footprints in your living room carpet that weren't there the night before. My question to you is that a threat? And so my response is, from a national security perspective, I was wearing my national security hat, it could be if it wanted to be, so we probably should figure out how it's getting into the house.
We should probably move at that point. We should probably get out of that apartment. There's boot prints. They're still walking around.
So these things we are encountering them over controlled U.S. airspace, like I said, over sensitive military installations. And so from a national security perspective, we've got to figure out what these things are.
No shit. We got to figure out what's going on. You see, you're saying you're being very professional, you're being very technical, you're being very calm as an intelligence officer, and then you're saying there's aliens here that we don't know what they want.
So why would you not apply that same rationale to your own personal security and better understanding the potential national security threats that UAP pose when you've just given examples in your book about orbs, incurring, operating with impunity at was it Los Alamos in New Mexico? I mean, you're not following your own advice there. You're taking one approach with your investigation of UAP for AATIP, but you're not adopting the same methodology. You're not practicing what you preach when it comes to observations of orbs in the potential in the UAP bucket. You're doing nothing. You're not collecting any information and data. And again, we can only go off what you've said, and we're taking what you said as true. So why the hypocrisy? Why the double standard? Why do one thing for AATIP and then do something entirely different in your own personal life while you're the director of AATIP throughout your tenure on AATIP? And that line, that analogy would be repeated time and time again. Lou would say it. That interview on the Daily Show, that was the 18th of September of 2024. A little over a month later, Lou would reiterate that analogy on, again, the Diary of a CEO podcast, where Lou would again offer that same muddy boot prints analogy, almost verbatim. Listen to what he says here, and you'll pick up it's almost verbatim to the line that he delivered in that Daily Show interview.
To be concerned, because look, from a governmental perspective, to determine this, and this is why I always say this is a national security issue, but not a national security threat, and there's a reason why. So There's a very simple calculus to determine if something is a threat. It's capabilities versus intent. We've seen some of the capabilities. We have no idea the intent. No clue. So we don't know if it's a threat. And let me give you a little analogy here that might help kind of put this. I use this analogy a lot to help illustrate what do I mean. I'm sure you live in a lovely home. Let me ask you the question. Do you lock your front door before you go to bed?
Yes.
Okay. And you know what? I do too. And I think most people, we don't expect anything bad to happen, but just out of precaution, right? And some folks may go the extra mile and decide, I'm going to just make sure the windows are locked once in a while. And you know what? I might even turn the alarm on at night because I can. Let's say you wake up one Sunday morning to have yourself a nice hot cup of tea or coffee, and you walk downstairs, and all of a sudden, as you come downstairs one bright morning, you notice size 12 muddy boot prints on your living room carpet that were not there the night before. Now, no one's been hurt, nothing's out of place, but despite you locking the front door and checking the windows and turning on the alarm, there are now boot prints in your living room floor that were not there the night before. My question to you is that a threat? My response is, it could be if it wanted to be, so we should probably figure out how it's getting into the house. This is kind of the same analogy of these things that can come in unimpeded, unchallenged into controlled U.S. airspace, over sensitive military installations, potentially interfere with our nuclear equities and capabilities. We should probably figure out what these things are.
It could be a threat if it wanted to be. Why didn't you take that same approach with the orbs, though? I don't understand that. I'll tell you what, if I had seen precisely what you described, that scenario, if I was walking down from my bedroom in the morning, wearing my slippers, going down to get a hot cup of coffee, and then I saw these muddy boot prints, you bet your ass I would be installing some security cameras external of my property, as well as getting as much security as I could, and I would be reporting what I've seen. I would be documenting it. I would be taking photographs. I would be even probably filming it, so I can then go down to the cop station and file a police report, because it could be a threat if it wanted to, and the green orbs could be a threat if they wanted to. You didn't have enough data at your disposal to confirm that it was or it wasn't. So why would you preach one approach with AATIP but not adopt that same approach and practice it in your own personal life? That does not make sense to me, and it makes me question the veracity of the claim that Lue has presented in his book. Some of the comments there, Jennifer came across as incredibly sincere with what she was describing. So again, if we take what you both are saying as true, your actions, your inaction, your decision not to do anything about it is at complete odds with what you were hoping to achieve and your objectives with AATIP, which was take a very data-driven approach to better understanding the potential national security threats that UAP pose, capabilities and intent. And orbs are documented in your book inside the Pentagon's hunt for UFOs. If you were really that unsure that orbs were UAP related, why include it in your book? So I would contend that orbs could 100% be UAP related. And you would only get closer to finding an answer if you actually did something about it, if you endeavored to collect some information and data. So again, we'll go through the comments that have popped up in the chat. But again, this response to these green orb encounters makes no sense to me, based on what your remit was and your mission objectives were for AATIP. So let's have a look at, let's continue on. I'm just going to get rid of some of these clips that are in my feed here. And we'll talk about an interview that you did with Jesse Michaels. And so now this is fast forwarding to a little bit out of order. This is the 11th of October of 2024. So again, this is still only a couple of months after Imminent has been released. It's been published. and you're talking about your observations again and encounters with green orbs during your interview with Jesse Michaels, and I believe Amar Kandil from Yes Theory was sitting down with you as well. So let's play this segment of that interview with Jesse Michaels on the 11th of October, 2024.
Hey, I can only give you my observations. Again, my opinion doesn't matter because people say, could it be ball lightning? Sure. St. Elmo's fire? Sure. Could it be weird electrical circuitry in the house that's causing atmospheric ionization in a localized area and ionizing the atmosphere? Yeah, sure could be. What I do know are the facts that it was witnessed not only by me and my wife and my kids, but also our neighbors. But it occurred when I got into AATIP. And it also was happening to other individuals that were part of that program. That I do know definitively. Same description in some different colors. Their stories will probably be coming out here in the near term.
Wow. What was the closest you've experienced an orb?
Right here.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, because with you, like the experience that we're talking about, it was probably maybe 100, 200 meters away.
Yeah.
It was like even further than that. Yeah. It was in the sky and the
very,
horizon.
very, very, very close. Some are far away in the sky, as you described. Some are right there up close and personal.
Wow.
I never felt anything, never felt any static charge. I was never afraid. More just kind of curious, kind of like, wow, that's interesting. You know?
Wow.
But then again, the whole portfolio is so weird. It's like,
There's gotta be a freak out. Like, I don't think maybe a news is, and again, obviously you've had experience in some crazy situations, worked in some crazy places, but I can't imagine a human experiencing something that can only be described as out of this world, this close, and for it to be like, I guess I'm just observing. Like
when we're off camera, I'm going to show you guys something.
Okay.
And I'll show you something and we'll see how you react.
Okay.
Wow.
So Amar's response there was exactly the same as mine. And wow, that's interesting. How can that be your only response? And then at the end there, Lou says that, let me show you something off camera. What was it that you showed off camera? Why is it good for them but not good for the general public? Is it footage of green orbs? Well, you said you didn't take footage of green orbs in your own home, so I'm going to take you at your word and suspect that it was something else. But why not show the general public what it is that you showed them? Maybe you have, I don't know. But again, my reaction to everything that Lou is saying is exactly the same as Amar's there. You only found it interesting and it was a wow moment for you. I would expect that response of maybe someone that had seen, a member of the general public that had seen a green orb once, but to see it repeatedly from 2010 to 2017, whilst you are heading up a UAP investigation or UAP investigatory body, AATIP, an informal program, whatever it was, you were looking into UFOs. It was part of your portfolio. And you didn't endeavor to collect any information or data in your own personal experience that could have added to the data-driven approach that you were taking, even if you passed off that data to others. Eric Davis, Hal Puthoff, maybe they could have done something with that data. They're the scientists. You're not the scientists. They are. So why didn't you collect any data and information? That doesn't make any sense to me. We'll come to towards the end here. We're going to come up with a recent interview. Now, this is not Lue Elizondo. This is Dan Farah, director of the Age of Disclosure. Dan was recently on Joe Rogan, and I would certainly encourage all of you that haven't seen the Age of Disclosure. In my eyes, certainly the best documentary that's been done to date on the UAP topic. Certainly, it raised a lot more questions for me, but I thought it was incredibly well done. Again, for folks that have not been exposed to this topic in the conversation of UAP, I think it is a really good, cliff notes for them to bring them up to speed, largely with what has happened since 2017. So again, I take my hat off to Dan Farah on a great job on his directorial debut. I thought he did a wonderful job. I still have certainly questions, but I thought it was certainly a good documentary that was targeted at the general public that is largely uninformed and unengaged on this topic. So during this interview on Joe Rogan, Dan Farrar would talk about folks that were featured in his film, The Age of Disclosure, and the encounters that they had with orbs. And I found this segment to be rather interesting. So let me play this for you.
Officials who actually investigated this for the government, like the people involved in AAWSAP and AATIP and UAP Task Force, they all started having activity at their homes when they were investigating non-human intelligent life.
Like
and
what kind of activity?
Orbs in their houses, orbs interacting with their family, causing medical issues for family members, ending up in the family members ending up in the hospital due to orb activity. Like
what issues due to orb activity?
One of the senior intelligence officials that I spoke to, and I'll let him tell his own story when he's ready, but his son got extremely impacted by an orb, black and blue over his whole body, had to go to the hospital, looked like someone took a bat to his chest. I didn't include this in the film, this section, because I feel like when you get into the stuff happening in people's houses, I think it's a bridge too far for a lot of people, and you got to like set the table with the base facts first, which is what my film does, and then they can open their minds to these other things. But what I found really interesting is when I would do these interviews with people and they would all talk about this activity they started having at their houses that in some cases caused medical issues. It was all after they started looking into non-human intelligent life, and their takeaway was that non-human intelligent life was looking into them because they were looking into non-human intelligent life. And they made the analogy of if a Russian spy comes to DC to spy on Congress, our intelligence community spies on the Russian spy. And so that was their outlook. And I thought that was really interesting and almost implies like a human level of thinking, you know?
Right, or maybe some attempt to make contact.
Yeah.
You know, there was a guy that I interviewed at Skinwalker Ranch who lived outside of the ranch who had an orb experience. And I talked to a few people there that were clearly out of their fucking mind and maybe on meth. But a few people that seemed pretty credible. And this guy was the most. Just a regular guy with a regular job. Interesting guy, cool to talk to. He said that he's had a few weird sightings, but the weirdest one was one day in his home, this orb that was like larger than a softball, he said, but it came flying into his house and was in the living room with him, and it was interacting with him. And then it flew down the hallway and flew right through the walls.
Yeah.
And disappeared. But he said it interacted with him.
Yeah.
Like it was in front of him, like letting him know that it's there.
Almost some people say almost in a playful way.
Yeah.
And I've heard about this orb activity in intelligence officials' houses like more times than I can remember, countless times. And the journey of this movie, I not only got to know a lot of these intelligence officials very well, but like went and spent time with their wives, with their kids, with them together. And when you see like a wife completing a husband's sentence, like they're telling you what they experienced together, it's bonkers, man. It's wild. It's like, holy shit, this happened, you know?
Yeah.
And then when you hear their kids talk about it separately, and you're like, that's literally word for word what, like, you guys are all experiencing the same thing. You have these different POVs.
It's not like the family got together with a coordinated lie.
Doesn't feel like
the
that.
Kids into doing it. That seems
that seems a little over the top because, like, to what end, right? I didn't even, it's not like I put it in the movie, you know?
Yeah.
But it's really fascinating. And the orb activity, who knows what it is, man? It could be another form of the warping of space-time in a localized area. Like once you do that, time and space is different in that bubble. So that could be a much bigger craft inside of a energy ball that we see.
Right.
We might this might be what we see as the orb, right? It might be a transportation device. There might be a being in there. And this is just what we're seeing is what's on the outside of this warping of space-time.
So you see Dan Farrar there is completely linked orbs with potential UAP. And, you know, again, based on what Dan has said there, we're working on the assumption what Lue has presented is the truth, because per his pledge, he said he will always tell us the truth. So what Dan had, what some of the key takeaways for me there were, you know, Dan said that some of the people that were involved in AAWSAP and AATIP in his film all encountered orbs in their houses Now, but he didn't put it in the film. And in some cases causing medical issues and negative health effects. And we know from the documentary The Age of Disclosure that his interview subjects, Jay Stratton, Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, were all involved in AAWSAP. Now, could there have been other interview subjects that he didn't include in the film that were also part of AAWSAP? Possibly. But if we just look at those three individuals, Jay Stratton, Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, did those guys and their families all encounter orbs as well? I would certainly like to hear more about Jay Stratton's time at AAWSAP, and obviously his book is coming out, I believe, next year. So did they all encounter orbs like Lue? Were they the individuals Lue was referring to? And Lue said in his interview with Julian Dorey that Hal and Eric said it was perfectly normal. How is that perfectly normal? Given the accounts we've heard that orbs can cause negative physiological effects and negative health effects. I find it incredibly hard to believe that Hal and Eric would have said that the green orbs were perfectly normal, as Lue stated in his interview with Julian Dorey. I also find it hard to believe that as scientists, Hal and Eric wouldn't want data. So, again, scientists crave data, and good scientists adhere to the scientific method. What is the scientific method? A systematic empirical process for exploring observations and answering questions by forming and testing hypotheses through controlled experiments, aiming to discover cause and effect relationships and build objective knowledge about the world, often involving steps like asking a question, research, forming a testable hypothesis, experimentation, data analysis, and drawing conclusions. It emphasizes evidence, skepticism, and iteration, allowing scientists to validate, modify, discard ideas. So Lue's not a scientist, and he stated that repeatedly, but Hal and Eric are. So why would you not adhere to AATIP's mission? Again, you led AATIP, and attempt to collect data and information and share it with both Eric and Hal for analysis. Again, someone make that make sense to me. It doesn't make sense, quite frankly. And I'm sure there are some that have, are happy to opine and provide their thoughts in the chat, which we'll get to. But again, it does not make sense to me whatsoever. And so now, as we come to the back end of the final couple clips I wanted to show, this is the most recent interview that Ross Coulthart did with Lue Elizondo. This is on the 10th of December. And to set this up, Lue is talking about how we really need to do a better job at understanding what is in our skies. So let me play this for you, again, in the context of what we're talking about this evening, and you can decide.
Lue, about this memo is that it's combining drones, human drones, and UAPs. Why did you do that? Why did you put in the same memo?
Sure. Well, first of all, there's a lot of commonalities between the two, right? We don't know something. Everything is unidentified until it becomes identified. And that's true whether it's a Chinese spy balloon or it is a drone, as we saw in the recent New Jersey flap last year, or it is a UAP. And so you can think of this emerging all-domain technology as a large umbrella. And under that umbrella, there are these smaller little umbrellas that fit. And UAP are one of them, drones are another. And at the end of the day, we have to do a better job of understanding what is in our skies. Otherwise, what happens is what we have this last year where we have to shut down airports, restricted airspace, and we're having to move some of our very sensitive military equities to another location, simply because we do not have control and awareness of what's in our skies.
So Lue states that everything is unidentified until it becomes identified, and that we have to do a better job at understanding what is in our skies. Well, I would argue, Lue, that you could have done a better job there by practicing what you preach, and applying that same rationale to your personal encounters with green orbs. Another clip from that same interview with Ross Coulthart.
Is we now know these things are real, whatever they are, and some of them may be man-made. Some of them may not be man-made, and some of them might be a combination of both scenarios. And this is exactly why we need to have this conversation as a public. This is why we need to bring people together. We need to have, I think, a single point of contact in the U.S. government that is there, for better or for worse, to answer the questions that need to be answered regarding this topic. This is not going away. And my real fear here is if we continue to ignore this topic, we're going to be in another really bad situation. Where we're going to have an event that is going to potentially eclipse the impact of 9/11 had on our society. That day is coming if we are not careful. If we do not take this topic seriously, it's a matter of time before some state or non-state actor figures out a way to utilize technology against us, to weaponize it. And it doesn't have to be necessarily drones, right? And if there's an adversary out there that has managed to reverse engineer UAP technology, can you imagine that scenario, right? Imagine some rogue nation like, North Korea, having the ability to exploit and reverse engineer just even some of the capabilities that we see now associated with UAP. That's a nightmare scenario. That's a threat that eclipses that of the nuclear threat.
So Lou said there's a need for a single point of contact. But Lou, you were that single point of contact. You were the director of AATIP. In your words, you were the director of AATIP, charged with collecting and analyzing information involving UAP. That was your mission. And you failed at that mission with respect to your own personal experience. And again, this is all working on the assumption that what you have presented, the claims that you presented, are true per your pledge. And for someone who, claims to have spent years analyzing UAP on behalf of the United States government, all of this raises more questions for me, unfortunately. And after watching and hearing what, hopefully I've just presented for everyone, I think those of you who are watching, I think it's perfectly valid for people to question the veracity of the claims that you've presented pertaining to your encounter with green orbs. And again, why? Well, given your public role and the stated mission of AATIP to investigate UAP capabilities and intent, you would normally expect a senior official who reports repeated close-range recurring phenomena in his own home to attempt some form of evidence collection or formal reporting. Now, there may have been formal reporting, you just haven't spoken about it, but there was no data collection with respect to photographic and video footage. Now, there could be plausible explanations for that inaction, not endeavoring to collect any information, namely photographic and video evidence. So let's explore some of those possible plausible explanations. For why he didn't collect data by way of video and photographic footage, which would obviously be of significant value in better understanding the extent nature of UAP and potentially, certainly the capabilities and intent. So I took it upon myself to throw a couple of questions ChatGPT's way, and it gave me some responses, and then I kind of thought about them and I've expanded on them. So I thought what we would now do is have a look at, what would a reasonable investigator normally do if this happened to them? Because a person responsible for or leading an official program investigating UAP, if they're personally experiencing recurring anomalous phenomena in their home, you would expect them to take at least some combination of the following: document their sighting contemporaneously, time, location, multiple witness statements. Was a witness statement collected from the neighbor that saw something that one would assume didn't know anything about AATIP. If your remit was classified, did that individual ever make a witness statement? Did they ever report it? We don't know. A reasonable investigator would capture photographic video evidence with available devices and preserve the originals. They would also notify relevant security, chain of command, and formal investigative officers, would be security, counterintelligence, AATIP, UAP task force, or even RO. So the incident is an official record. Did you report your observations of green orbs to RO? I'm very doubtful. You would deploy, a reasonable investigator would deploy simple sensors, dash cam, phone cameras, external CCTV, EM sensors, spectrum logging devices, or ask colleagues with instrumentation to collect corroborating data. Did you do that? If not, why not? A reasonable investigator would collect and maintain a chain of custody if any physical or recorded evidence is obtained, and if necessary, involve other agencies, whether it be the FBI, for potential compromise or classified matter concerns, if the events raise security or counterintelligence flags. If none of these things happened, it is at least procedurally unusual for someone in Elizondo's position and with AATIP's mandates. And I think there are all perfectly valid points that, again, this is what ChatGPT has provided, and I've kind of summarized the bullet points. They were a lot longer than in each of these, so I've just kind of broken them down a little bit for you. So, well, let's look at let's give Lue the benefit of the doubt. What are some of the plausible explanations for why Lue took it just as curious? Wasn't something to be alarmed about, didn't bother about setting up cameras inside or external to collect photographic video evidence? Well, personal/human factors. Could it be that memory, sleep state experience, or misperception? Elizondo and others have described some events as borderline hypnagogic or experienced at the edge of sleep. Such states can be vivid and later remembered as real. Memory errors over time are common. I don't invest any stock in that whatsoever. Based on what we have heard repeatedly from Lue there about his encounters, so we can, I think, safely cross that one off. You pretty much, I think you would have a pretty good memory if you recorded or didn't record green orbs floating and hovering in your house and disappearing through walls. So I think that is highly unlikely. What about stigma and reputational risk? If the experiences seemed paranormal or embarrassing, he might have hesitated to document them publicly because doing so could damage credibility or impede his ability to work with skeptical colleagues and policymakers. Well, I think we can cross that one out as well, because he told us that he had talked about orbs with his AATIP colleagues. He even talked about it at the office. So he's obviously sharing information about his experience with some folks, and some folks are experiencing the same thing. Operational / classification concerns. If Lue believed the phenomena implicated classified matters, he may have thought, rightly or wrongly, that he couldn't publicly document or share evidence without following sensitive channels, and may have either not done so or done so in ways that remain classified. Now, that's one that's popped up a couple of times. Now, I don't invest a lot of stock in that as well, because there have been numerous occasions where Lue hasn't been in a position to talk about something that was clearly classified or was not approved by DOPSA, and he said, look, I can only talk about what I've been approved to say. I need to be very careful on how I respond to this. I don't want to reveal any information that could jeopardize sources and methods. So he's said that a number of times when he's been very careful not to cross that line. But in all of his testimony in these interviews that we've seen and his books, he's in the interviews at least, he's categorically stated that he didn't set up any cameras. He didn't attempt to collect any evidence, photographic and video in nature, that could have helped potential investigations of the orb phenomena different colors maybe having different mission sets. So we're going to put an argument forward as to why I think the classification concern falls flat. What about security and counterintelligence handling? Claims around his files and related issues drew law enforcement attention, e.g. later searches of his offices or a safe, a report in media coverage and congressional testimony context where the safe was empty. I think Aro even commented on that. That complicates the story and could affect what he can say publicly. I really don't invest a lot of stock on that one either. What about workload and prioritization? Being responsible for a program, informal program, if that's all it was, AATIP, he talked about his portfolio being AATIP and Guantanamo Bay. Being responsible for a program and for official reporting could have pulled him toward other investigations. He may have judged the home events as low probative value compared with other reporting from pilot sensors, even if to outsiders that judgment looks odd. And I agree that it does. And then we come to some of the other explanations that could raise eyebrows as it pertains to embellishment. Did Lue Elizondo exaggerate his encounters with green orbs, whether it be consciously or unconsciously? We know that Stephen Greenstreet, who I don't have the fondest thinking of in his approach, he has hinted in his thinking that, Lue has embellished many of his claims and maybe even, appropriated other people's experiences, claim them as his own, or maybe a more uncharitable. And this is an example of where embellishment has come up in discussion in the past, where Eric Davis, this information was leaked from a private group that Eric Davis was or is a member of. He states Lue never worked for, I don't have a date and timestamp for, unfortunately. Lue never worked for the AATIP nickname / AAWSAP actual name. He was also not in a support role to the DIA program manager, Jim Lekatsky. Jay Stratton did provide support to Lekatsky, while Lue provided some support to the UAP task force when Jay was its director. A question from a gentleman by Nick Mill. Eric Davis, so is he lying or just embellishing? Eric Davis, Nick Mill, he's embellishing. That's from Eric Davis's keyboard, from Eric Davis's mouth, that Lue has embellished some of the claims that he's made previously. Now, what's one of the more uncharitable plausible explanations? That there is deliberate deception that's involved. Now, we're taking Lue at his word. We're operating under the assumption that he's staying true to his pledge, that I will always tell you the truth. But what if that's not true? What if he has deliberately deceived, which is deliberate deception, intentional and purposeful misleading through false information, often for personal gain? It involves a conscious choice to lie, conceal, or manipulate facts differing from accidental mistakes. Can we rule that out as a plausible explanation? I don't think we can, nor can we rule out embellishment. And we can't ignore that. I don't necessarily say to you, well, that's what it is. I don't know, but we cannot ignore comments from colleagues of his, Eric Davis, who we know is an AAWSAP, and we know supported AATIP. And on the deliberate deception line, well, Jay Stratton's wife, Michelle Stratton, in a Discord chat, a private Discord chat, made some comments. For transparency, I regret ever telling people to trust Lue because AATIP was not a real program. For starters, he was never the director of the head of, or the leader of AATIP or SAP. He wasn't involved, quotes, for almost a decade, as he says. He never did the UAP investigations for the government. There is more, but I'm not at liberty to put it out right now. So again, we cannot ignore, now we can't We don't know the veracity of those comments made by Michelle Stratton. It'd be certainly something I'd be interested to have either her or Jay Stratton comment on directly, but I don't think we can ignore those comments altogether when it comes to deliberate deception being a plausible explanation. Now, why does the classification argument fall flat, in my humble opinion? And again, this is leveraging ChatGPT to provide some baseline thoughts here, which I expanded on. Well, why does the classification argument fall flat? Well, for classification to apply, the data would need to originate from sensitive sources or methods. But a simple photograph or video taken by a civilian in a private home normally would not implicate classified collection methods. If home observed UAPs were treated as part of an official UAP investigation, AATIP, or something else, AAWSAP, or had the potential to be, standard procedure would arguably require logging, documentation, chain of custody, and appropriate internal reporting, especially for someone in senior leadership of a UAP program. The absence of any known contemporaneous report weakens the classification explanation. Now, Lue's never spoken specifically about logging, documentation, chain of custody. He's only spoken specifically about the decision not to attempt to record these orbs with cameras, photo or video. But you know, that is another point to certainly consider. Public disclosure. So even after classification, public disclosure might remain possible, or at least plausible, under current transparency regimes. Both proponents of disclosure and critics of overclassification argue that many UAP records are overclassified and that data could be sanitized. And we know that ARO is doing that more and more now. They're starting to sanitize a lot of the video footage they put out. They're redacting a lot of the heads-up display information, and they're putting out video footage. So that data could be sanitized, even have the metadata scrubbed without compromising genuine national security. If every self-reported civilian home sighting, especially by a senior defense official, if they were automatically classified, such claims would become effectively unfalsifiable, which would undermine their evidentiary value and public accountability. And so let's now kind of talk about some of the other arguments that go against the classification constraint explanation. In other words, reasons the justification does not make sense and appears inconsistent. First, AATIP had no formal authority, no official mandate, and no funding. Well, we can make that determination based on information that's out in the public domain, that AATIP was an informal program. James Lakatsky said it didn't have any funding. If it's an informal program, would it have any formal official mandate? I don't know that it would, particularly because the Pentagon has stated that AATIP was not a formal program. It had no operational investigative authority. It was not an officially chartered office. So if Elizondo lacked official authority, then he would not be constrained by these operational restrictions, because there were no official operations to constrain. So thus the classification argument weakens. The next other reason, if the orbs are inside his house, there is no classified context, because classification applies to government systems, intelligent methods, program details, not to events observed in private homes, private residences, naturally occurring lights, which he has stated that they could have been ball lightning, could it have been some other natural benign phenomena, personal smartphone photos, and civilian experiences. There's no classified context for that. Nothing about photographing strange lights inherently triggers classification. The next one, investigating the orbs could have benefited AATIP. If Elizondo truly believed that UAP represented a national security issue, that they could intrude homes and his mission was to assess capability and intent, then not investigating represents a dramatic failure to pursue potential high-value intelligence. If a program director won't investigate direct experiences in his own home, it raises questions about program commitment, methodological rigor, or narrative construction. Another one, intelligence officers regularly report suspicions around their homes. Well, the intelligence community and DoD personnel are required to report surveillance, unexplained activity, potential intrusions, anomalous events that may relate to foreign intelligence threats. Now, how could you reach a conclusion that these orbs weren't potentially foreign adversarial in nature? It seems very low on the probability scale, but how can you rule it out when you stated that it could potentially be so many other things? If Lue believed the orbs were real and potentially threatening, as we know, the blue orbs cause negative physiological health effects, well, not reporting or investigating contradicts CI counterintelligence guidelines. Next one, no reason classification prevents taking personal photos. A private citizen or cleared employee can take photos of their home, strange lights, security concerns. If the photos contain nothing classified, they are not classified. The argument collapses under basic classification rules. Claiming classification restricts him is unfalsifiable and non-specific. This can be seen as a narrative shield, a way to avoid accountability, and a method to avoid providing evidence. Classification can be invoked to excuse missing documentation, lack of physical evidence, inconsistent claims, and this undermines credibility. So in summary, there is no clear, consistent classification-based rationale that would prevent a DoD officer from investigating or documenting unexplained phenomena in their own home. The reasoning appears inconsistent and possibly constructed after the fact. The strongest point against Elizondo's explanation, if he genuinely believed the orbs were UAP, potential exotic technology, or anomalous intrusions connected to AATIP's mission, then failing to investigate is profoundly inconsistent with the mission he claims to have led. And that was kind of the point that I was trying to, stab at as we went through earlier in the episode. So at the end of the day, whether you believe Lue Elizondo's claims or you don't, I'm just presenting the information that I had questions about. You will reach your own conclusion. But whether you believe the account of the green orbs comes really down to how you weigh extraordinary claims without supporting evidence. Again, it's to a degree, it's a trust me, bro. You trust but verify. Well, these claims cannot be verified. Lue has presented them. He's got one corroborative witness, his wife, Jennifer, who again came across as being very sincere in her interview with Ross. And some listeners of this will choose to give him the benefit of the doubt, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not asking you to be a hater of Lue or a lover of Lue. I'm just presenting this in the context that it doesn't make any sense to me personally. So some will give him the benefit of the doubt. Others may see these contradictions as too significant to ignore, like I do. But what's undeniable is this: if these events occurred as described, repeated multi-year intrusions into the home of a senior intelligence official, they would represent an extraordinary data point in the history of modern UAP encounters. And yet there is nothing at all in the way of documentation or investigative follow-through to substantiate them. And I think that is the crux of it. So you will take away what you will from what I've presented. Again, I think it raises a lot more questions if we take Lue at his word and that the claims he's presented are in fact the truth. Then that raises a lot of questions regarding his lack of action. and his inaction to do anything about it, to collect data that would help further AATIP's mission and better understand capabilities and intent. So that's it on that front, folks. The last thing I wanted to leave you with, the second reason why I wanted to do this deep dive was at the very front end. You remember I played a clip where Lue talked about the fact that he doesn't mind criticism. He welcomes it. Again, this is constructive criticism. I'm not bashing Lue. This is not a puff piece on Lue. These are real questions that I have that are critical of Lue's lack of action. So this last clip that I'll show you is also why I decided to do this deep dive. And I'll play it for you now.
Do you consider yourself a first-hand or a second-hand witness to the UAP or UFO phenomenon?
Firsthand, but let's deconstruct that a little bit, because I was always a nuts and bolts guy. People say, "Oh, did you see an alien?" Right? Well, what I saw was material that a lot of scientists, very good scientists, prominent scientists in the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, were stymied by the origins. Right? It had such a unique property, and the way the molecules were arranged, without going into a lot of detail, required a level of specificity and technology that at the time we simply did not have. We simply didn't have it.
So you're saying that you're a first-hand witness?
A first-hand witness to the fact that we've been studying this as a government for a long time, and that we are in possession of very exotic material that may very well not be from here.
Okay.
And technology.
Okay, so
does anyone see how that response is incredibly problematic based on what we've just covered over the last 2 hours? No mention, no reference whatsoever about his encounters with green orbs. Inside the Pentagon's hunt for UFOs, an entire chapter devoted to orbs and his personal experience. And he doesn't consider himself a first-hand witness of observing orbs as potential UAP. Again, I do not understand why you would omit that from your response. You're talking about materiel. You're talking about that you know that the phenomena has been studied, but again, you didn't study and investigate your own personal experience that could have helped further your mission. So hopefully all of these things put together give you a much broader perspective now. I've tried to pull as much of, if not all, of the public available statements that Lue has made on his green orb encounters, with supporting information from obviously his book, questions that I have, leveraging some of the resources that we have available to better understand plausible explanations, where those explanations fall flat, so you can walk away, go away, and reach your own informed conclusions. Again, I don't have a definitive conclusion after all of this. I only have more questions, and I think it would be fair to say that there are a lot of questions that Lue still has to answer pertaining to his lack of action on his own personal encounter with these green orbs, because it is in direct conflict with what he was attempting to achieve in his role and in his leadership position at AATIP. They do not reconcile. They don't gel. And so more questions than answers, unfortunately, like everything with this topic. That's everything that I wanted to cover off on the Lue front, folks. So I do really appreciate you sticking with me for 2 hours. I know that people have been commenting back and forth, and I deliberately haven't shown them so I can stay on track as we go through. But I do want to give you an opportunity to have your comments and questions shared. So let's have a look. Bex, you commented earlier on, yes, I do have video of orbs above my house, but not when it appeared inside because there's some high strangeness around the experience. Well, kudos to you for at least attempting to collect some data. We certainly know that Lue did not. So some of the other comments that have come through, I'm just going to scroll through quite a few of them, folks. Oh, there we go. I didn't. I was looking through the Rogan interview that Elizondo did, and I couldn't find anything specifically pertaining to his own personal encounter. But Lue said exactly what orbs look like on Rogan, and only on Rogan. He said it looks like a diamond, and he's right. So I don't know the timestamp of that, but I don't think he talked about his own experience on Rogan. Oh, there you go. If you want to bash Lue, go to the Metabunk page, which I actually haven't seen, so I'll be interested to have a look at their analysis or their comments. But I wasn't aware of that, so thanks for the heads up, Bex. Dead fish cheese spread. 2 kinds of orbs: light orb that can go in your house, and fireball orbs that would burn your house down if they came inside. Never seen an orb, so I've got no frame of reference there. But certainly different types of orbs have been, I mean, look at what the Foo Fighters, orbs in the sky in World War II, fireballs in the sky. Bex comments, Jennifer Elizondo, I'd routinely see orbs, small little spherical green, lightish green types of color, and I'd be just walking down the hall. I would stop and it would just continue to go right through the wall. Certainly, she said this to Ross. Certainly anomalous. Colin, greatly appreciated, my friend. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate you gifting 5 memberships. You're a legend, my friend. Thank you for supporting the channel and helping it grow, my friend. And I hope you are keeping well. Let's go through some of the other comments here. Yes. Simjet AU, Curt had a hissy fit about UFO stuff about 12 months or so ago. Yes, he's completely removed a lot of the long form interviews. Talking about Curt Jaimungal on Theory of Everything. He's completely removed all of his long form interviews on the UAP topic, and I think he's kind of gotten fed up with it. Jennifer's eye closing while talking does suggest that she was immensely vulnerable while responding to Ross, which suggests sincerity. Again, I'm taking Lue at his word. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt and acknowledging that pledge that he made. I'm always going to tell you the truth, that's what he's doing. So now I don't know that that's the case 100%, but that's the approach that I've taken with presenting all of the footage and the commentary from the book, is working on the assumption that what Lue has said is true. Now, I don't know that for a fact. Is there embellishment and deliberate deception? It's a plausible explanation. So I don't think you can ignore it, like I said. I too enjoyed Curt's interviews with Elizondo. Curt was good. He asked some really good questions. He had a bit of a that interview that he did with Linda Moulton Howe will go down in history, but generally I think he asked some very insightful and pertinent questions. But some of your other comments here. It's great to see that you guys have been commenting back and forth throughout. Short order cook, I've seen orbs in a number of situations, paranormal or UFO related. I have pics of both types in those instances. I don't think the classifications are clear, but they exist. That's a fair point. And again, I've never had my own sighting, so it's on my bucket list to see something before I pass off this mortal coil of ours. Bex goes on to say, in my experience, it seemed it was absolutely intelligent and conscious, like it had a goal to accomplish. And when it materialized, it wasn't expecting to see me and my ex. Interesting. I know that Carl Vibe goes by Carl Crusher, and Mike is it Batista, Magic Mike Batista, have just recently, I think, interviewed on the Good Trouble Show with Matt Ford, talking about the orbs that they captured on foot. Again, to their credit, going out into the field, collecting data. Sure, some of what they captured was likely low Earth orbit satellites, satellite flaring, but can you say that's true of everything that they captured on camera? I don't know if you can, and I haven't looked into what they've captured, but to their credit, they're getting out in the field and they're doing something. Oh, you didn't have to do that, Dead Bluebird X. I greatly appreciate the generous support, my friend. Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Benno. I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas in Oz, and greatly appreciate your support. So thank you so much. Jimmy goes on to say, I just can't believe that Elizondo didn't take a photo or video of his orb experiences that happened multiple times. He could have captured something. Right, exactly right. Like if it happens once and, oh, well, I didn't have a camera there, never see it again. But if it happens multiple times over a number of years, and Lewis stated that they only saw them when they were at home, what about when no one was at home? So what about when you're out at work or you're out on the weekend? Set up cameras inside and see if you capture anything. I don't know how good motion detection cameras were good back in 2010, but certainly they were available in 2017, that's for sure, because I had one myself. And they were probably in the U.S. and Australia is always a little slow to get tech, so I imagine it was available a number of years earlier in the US. So it's a frustrating one. Bex, in my experience, Grant, there's nothing that felt like I wasn't in control when it appeared inside my closing encounter. After the experience, I couldn't and didn't even talk about it with my ex. That is weird. And it often pops up time and time again. Experiences will either they won't talk about it or they've forgotten about it. I've covered Kurt Russell's experience, and he and his stepson, Oliver Hudson, they kind of forgot about it after it happened. And it was only years after the Phoenix Lights incident that Kurt overheard a show that his partner Goldie Hawn was watching, and it kicked his memory into gear. So interesting. Tracks. Yeah, to expand on what Bex said, Grant, I had a close friend from Sydney who I worked with who confided me about her experience, and she said she told me once how she saw a UFO over her once pretty big, and she had her iPhone with her, but not once thought to pull it out. Again, that's another thing I've heard a number of times, that if you see something that you don't think to maybe get your camera out the first time. But again, if it happened multiple times over many years, you'd think after a few sightings, you would at least catch on. And, granted, what you see with the human eye and then capture on the phone, what you capture on your iPhone may not do what you saw with your eyeballs justice, but at least you've made an attempt to actually capture some data. And I agree, Jimmy, it makes no sense not having cameras around his house. Trax goes on, so I bet if he had set up all those cameras, I bet if he had set up all those cameras, they probably would have avoided being recorded. The phenomena is always so elusive. Yep, I'm the same. I'm with you, Jimmy. I've got, how many cameras have I got? Two cameras that are external. No, sorry. Yeah, 2 cameras that are external and 3 cameras that are internal. Now, 2 of those internal cameras, one for my daughter's room, just to see how she's sleeping at night, if she's stirring, and one for our little Bubba boy, and also for our garage. If someone breaks in, just try, we've had robberies and burglaries in the suburb that I live in, so I want to protect my property and my family. And we've got a Ring camera as well as a Ring doorbell that has camera attached to it as well. So in this day and age, it's just nuts that you wouldn't have security cameras. But Colin makes a good point here. Wireless security cameras are not secure. It can provide real-time intel to adversaries. I've worked in multiple high security industries and BlackBerry company only phones. I get it. what if you had a hardline though security camera like these CCTV cameras? Pre the Internet of Things, certainly security cameras operated on a closed circuit television structure. They didn't have, it wasn't all wireless like you see with the Arlos these days. It wasn't all the Internet of Things. So, again, particularly, I just don't, when you take into context that Lue in 2014 found out that he was on ISIS and Al-Qaeda kill list, that would just, if I was in that position, I know that's what I would be doing, taking every possible measure I could to protect my family, making sure my address is, I'm not listed anywhere, and Lue may have done those things, but to not have surveillance technology in and around your own home is just mind-boggling to me. I don't know, and I don't think, and I'm sure there would be camera technology that you could procure through your networks in DoD and IC that are pretty hard to hack. Again, I'm just thinking out loud. Deadfish Cheesebread, there is no such thing as ball lightning. That video is electric transforming, burning in the distance, and Lewis trying to push ball lightning lie. Yeah, I think I've seen the video where it's going across the train tracks. I actually included it in my very, very first video. I think ball lightning, so certainly St. Elmo's fire is a real thing. I don't know if ball lightning has ever been observed with sensors. I honestly don't know, but certainly St. Elmo's fire is a thing, and that is common for in the civil aviation, commercial aviation industry. There's some stunning photos actually of St. Elmo's fire, electric streaks across the windscreen of an airline. Pretty impressive stuff. Colin goes on, all color equal frequency. Think microwaves versus light bulb. Interesting. Well, certainly anecdotally, the blue orbs are the ones to avoid. So if ever I see a blue orb, I'll be sure to make my motion detection cameras working, but I will be hightailing it out of there with my family. I don't think I'll be going anywhere near based on the anecdotal evidence. Trax, it doesn't make sense to me that Lue would ever intentionally try to walk back anything he said. Surely he's just done so many interviews and trying to keep a consistent message. That's a fair point. Yep. And I know if you've done multiple interviews and you're talking about the same things, you do develop a kind of a repetitive messaging to stay on point. So it's consistent, obviously. Yeah, and we're not necessarily looking for inconsistencies. We're looking at the reasons for the inaction is the big piece that I'm kind of tackling onto. Do you think there's a bit of a Lue Elizondo fatigue happening at the moment? I certainly do, following the recent gaffes that we've seen from him. For a lot of people, the presentation of a photograph that was irrigation circles at the Congressional Forum, I think that was a last stand for a lot of folks. It was the last line, the last straw, so to speak. And that's basically not the first time that's happened as well. There's been multiple instances where Lue has presented something that it was not. So I personally don't have a lot of confidence in Lue, and again, this is just from my observations of him and his approach to not attempting to collect any data or information about his own experience, claiming that he is able to remote view but doesn't know how to meditate, and these three instances where he's presented a photograph or video as something that it was actually not is a concern for me personally. But others may feel differently, and I respect that. I'm not trying to convince you. of my argument. I'm just presenting what is of interest to me and the questions that I have. Bex, I think this is really a really dynamic topic, and I've had fleeting feelings and perspectives on things. I think Lue is battling with paranoia. He's obviously been so exposed to tradecraft, his mind is cooked. And that you just made me think of another thing as well. So I know it was reported, this was years ago, that Lue was known to wear a bulletproof vest when he was out in public. Now, was that a response to the revelation to him that he was on ISIS and Al-Qaeda's kill list? If it was, again, you're taking precautions to protect your own personal well-being and security. But what about your family? What about in your own home? Again, it just does not make sense to me personally, for someone that has not worked in the intelligence community or the defense world. I could just not imagine. I cannot imagine not having security cameras around my home as a way to document incursions with impunity in my personal airspace. Doesn't make sense to me. Just want to see if there's any other comments. Again, I know that a lot of comments have come through. Aaron, good to see you, by the way. Was Lue throwing his family under the bus to justify him coming out to talk about those orbs? It's a good question. I honestly don't have an answer. I don't know. I mean, if there is all of those plausible explanations that we looked at, if there is deliberate deception, if that is if that is what is behind this, then if it is deliberate deception, then Jennifer Elizondo is complicit in that deception. Now, I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying that's what we've put forth as one of the plausible explanations. I have no idea. I don't know. I've never talked to Lue about his experience. I know I've got plenty of questions if I had an opportunity to ask him. But again, his lack of action, his inaction, his indecision does not make sense to me. Trax, maybe he just wanted to be left alone when at home with his family. Trying to collect data might have encouraged the phenomena more and stirred it up. True. But again, if you're the director, if that was just an average Joe, I'd understand that. But if you're the director of AATIP and you're advocating for the UAP topic to be taken seriously, it feels like there's a missed opportunity there. It could have actually helped further the argument to take UAP seriously. MG1, what is your general opinion and point about this? I might have lost the context to your question that was asked about an hour ago, so apologies. I've still got a lot of messages that you've put through here. So Colin says, I have talked with my wife using a chalkboard because my home security was potentially compromised. I believe Lue is legitimate in my humble opinion. Respect your opinion and position there, Colin. I'm not going to argue on how you feel. That is completely appropriate. And if you have that, if you have your own opinion, I'm not, again, trying to convince you of my opinion. I'm just sharing with you what my opinion and concerns are. And again, I'm not bashing you, Lue. I think we wouldn't be where we are today without his advocacy, from 2017 to now. But I just have so many more questions that, unfortunately, lead me to have a lack of confidence in him as a figurehead going forward. I'm more interested to hear from the likes of Jay Stratton, and I think there'll be hopefully a lot of information coming out about the AAWSAP era, which Jay was a part of. And Jay has said that it was in 2015, 2016 that he implemented AATIP, that he started AATIP. So again, the waters are so muddy, unfortunately, on the AATIP or SAP thing. It's never a clean cut, path to the truth. And I think that's so frustrating for a lot of folks. This is kind of all the minutia. Does it matter? Do people care? Some don't. No, absolutely some don't. But I want to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as it pertains to this topic and how we reached a conclusion or a determination, or for Congress to foot the bill on a new investigatory body, whether it's like ARO being stood up, or the disbandment of ARO and another office that's maybe run by the FBI. I know that's what Anna Paulina Luna wants to do. So who knows? Joe Rogan episode 2194, Lue Elizondo, 19-minute mark. Kind of a wedge, yeah, but it was silver metallic and like a diamond, maybe that's a better way to describe it, like a diamond. So he's obviously talking about orb shapes there by the looks of it. It's a fair point from Bex. I would never get security cameras, but I would document. So you would obviously take notes, contemporaneous notes of what you have encountered or seen. I think we're pretty coming close to the end, folks. Aussie 9353, there is a lot that Lue can't and won't talk about. That's true. I do believe that he is constrained by his his non-disclosure agreements and obviously classified information sources and methods. So, there is, again, it comes back to the trust but verify. But unfortunately, what's so frustrating in this topic is there seems to be too much blind trust and not enough of the verifying. And we can't verify a lot of this stuff because it is claimed to be behind closed doors and classified in nature. So what do you do with that? You just have to see what transpires over time. But I think there is certainly disclosure fatigue is a real thing. I know I've wanted, more than just anecdotal evidence and claims. I want to see some supporting evidence, and a lack of that is frustrating over time. And I get that that's frustrating for a lot of folks as well. No apologies needed, Short or Cook won't. Sorry, not engaging much. I'm listening, working tonight, and reading the chat. Appreciate you being here as always, my friend. Let's have a look at one or two more comments that have come through. Great to see there's some really engaging discussions going back and forth in the chat. I'll have to go back and have a read over these myself. Mark, always good to see you, my friend. Thanks for tuning in so late. Geez, we're at the 11 p.m. mark, 2.5 hours. We'll be out if you're under 3, that's for sure. Sasha, great to see you, my friend. Lue occasionally over eggs the pudding, but remains an interesting guy. Is the question, could Lue be counter intel? Well, I know that's what some people certainly think. And a lot of people play that clip time and time again where he's on Calling All Beings, where he's saying, I was a counter intel guy. I was asked to use those skill sets in the UFO community, or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. I honestly don't know. I haven't really invested a whole lot of time into, and to be perfectly honest, I don't really. I'll listen to what Lue has to say, but I think we're beyond hearing from just Lue now. There are other folks that are just as interesting or more interesting. Certainly, Jay Stratton is one that I'm very interested to hear from when he releases his book, and hopefully we'll go out on a interview circuit and answer questions that folks have. Anthony, great to see you, my friend. G'day, always good to see you. Yes, hope you have a wonderful, safe and festive holiday season with your family, my friend, and looking forward to bigger and better things from you in 2026. For those of you that don't follow Anthony, Encounters Down Under podcast, you can check it out on, I think, most platforms. Just Google it. Some really good interviews and content that Anthony puts out. So, and I was fortunate enough to be up the Australian UFO Festival with him and a few other folks at Cardwell earlier this year, and I'll be heading up there next year as well. I've got my questions answered by the Tedesco brothers in my documentary, and John Greenwald and Ashton Forbes, Backyard Professor Monkey. Maybe that was pertaining to another partial comment there. So I might have missed a bit of the context there. Let's have a look. Ball lightning makes me wince when I hear that. There's no such thing. You've been psyched to say it. Again, I've never been exposed to anything ball lightning-ish, so I would not know. I'm not getting Tarantino vibes from Grant. I appreciate the sentiment there. I try to be. I know a thing or two about a thing or two, but I'm not always the smartest man in the room. That's for sure. Are you guys from Australia? A lot of us are, but we get a lot of international folks in the chat, so it's always good to see folks here. Mark, I've had a bad feeling about Lue from the start. I know there are others that have as well. Yeah, there are a lot of folks that I don't trust in this community that I think are disingenuous and have maybe nefarious motivations. But, you know, I try not to live in an echo chamber. I try to listen to both sides of the argument, even if it's a topic that I'm really not in agreement with. I'll at least try and hear a counter argument. And so I try. It's hard to do, but I try and stay as best I can down the line on the fence. And I know being kind of diplomatic sometimes frustrates people, but you know, until I've seen evidence for something, you know, that will only lean me one way or the other. So I as best I can, try and stay on the fence. I agree with your sentiment there, Anthony. There can be a lot of arguments made on Lue's involvement, but regardless, he has made a lot of effort to bring forward the reality of UAP. Absolutely. And again, I credit him for getting us to where we are today with on the conversation and Congress taking it seriously. Do I have a conclusion on all of this? No, I've only got more answers, more questions than I do answers, I'm afraid. On this particular topic that we're covering, Lue's in a green orb encounters. Again, the questions that pop up to me only fuel my lack of confidence in Lue's ability in his role to you know, better understand the nature and extent of UAP. If these are the concerns that I have, you know, if this is an oversight on his part with respect to his own personal experience, then one has to ask the question: well, what potential oversights were there in your official remit capacity to investigate UAP? It's like if someone you know, if someone blatantly lies and you call them out on a lie, well, what else have they lied about? Or if someone has you know, made has not done their due diligence, or there's a lack of oversight, well, doesn't automatically discredit everything else they've done, but it should at least raise a flag for you and say, well, what else potentially is there that should be a concern? And again, I don't necessarily invest any stock, like Eric Davis's comment there about Lue embellishing, and you know, Michelle Stratton's comments insinuating that Lue has lied or there's some deception about his role in AATIP. I don't know that to be true. I don't know the veracity of Eric's claim that he's embellishing or Michelle Stratton's claim that Lue's being deceptive. I don't know the veracity of Lue's claims, but I can't ignore what has been put out there. I have to just file it away and just keep a note of it in the back of my mind. So anyway, yes, true, Aaron. Speaking, well, my opinion, not necessarily my what is true, but certainly what questions that I have. I think we're coming to the end here, folks. Anthony makes a comment regarding orbs. Seems satellites have become classified as orbs. If travel's straight and consistent, means it's a satellite, unless it moves in ways that defies our capabilities. Might be something. Yeah, I mean, satellites would tend to move in straight lines, And I know, and Anthony's done a lot of work with trying to convey to folks how easy it is to misidentify Starlink and perceive that to be UAP. And there are things that you can look out for to identify Starlink, or if it's a low Earth orbit LEO satellite or satellite flaring. I still think the large majority of UAP that are observed are misidentification, but it's not the 99% that we're interested in. It's the 1% stuff that, ARO has said that 2 to 3% of its holdings are truly anomalous stuff, and that's what we want to hear about. I did hear Carl say that someone called him the Timu Jeremy Corbell the other day. Well, look, folks, we're getting to almost 2 hours and 40 minutes, so I do want to come up on the back end. But again, Anthony puts a good point in. The issue is people reporting seeing orbs consistently around, sometimes every night, yet people want to call them UFOs, but deny any plausible evidential explanation. I think, yeah, I mean, again, I've never seen a UAP, but I know, having listened to folks and just done my own researches, that you want to, and again, it's easy to say, but maybe harder to do, that if you do see a UAP, how quickly are you going to think, all right, I've got to jot down the time, the location, what are the weather conditions, and take note of all things that can give more data points. I mean, if you see something truly extraordinary and anomalous, are you going to remember to think that in the moment? Maybe not. And maybe it's a little bit naive of me to say that, I would, get the camera out, take note of time, location, and all these other little data points that Mick West actually put out a good post a while back saying, if you do see a UAP, these are the things you should take note of. And it was really, really a concise list of things that you should be mindful of, at least. All right. We've got to the end, folks. Pretty sure. Thank you, Anthony. Always good to see you again, my friend. Mark says Pine Gap is a cornerstone. Great. We covered Pine Gap in a previous episode. A very interesting place, and certainly shrouded in mystery and UAP lore, that's for sure. So, well, look, let's wrap it up there, folks. I know a lot of you have stayed with me from the get-go, so we're at the 2 hours and 40-minute mark. So want to thank you all for your support and tuning in to the Unexplained Rundown throughout 2025. Looking forward to bringing bigger and better things to you all in the channel in 2026. So thank you, as always, for tuning in. Please do hit that subscribe button if you aren't subscribed to the channel. Like, share if it's of interest to your family and friends. If you think, please feel free. And if you want to support the channel, you do obviously have some membership options. Check out the descriptions in the show notes below. So thank you all. Hope you have a wonderful festive holiday break, Christmas with your family and friends. Have a wonderful New Year's break, and be safe. And look forward to seeing you again on another episode of the Unexplained Rundown in the new year. So thanks again, and have a wonderful Christmas with your families. Bye for now.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Unexplained Rundown, please consider giving it a thumbs up, sharing with your friends, family, colleagues, and social network, as well as subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to be notified whenever the Unexplained Rundown goes live, premieres, or posts a new video, be sure to ring that cowbell.